At first, I couldn't believe it, but then when the siblings called me, the way she sounded broke my heart because Yaneli didn't deserve that, nor did her baby.
A shocking arrest in the murder of 18-year-old Yaneli Solario Rivera and her 3-week-old daughter, Celine.
Today, police announcing the arrests of 22-year-old Yoreli Solario Rivera, Yaneli's sister, and her boyfriend, 26-year-old Martin Arroyo Morales, for 2 counts of premeditated murder.
She was cradling her 3-week-old baby, safe and asleep, when gunfire tore through the night. Both were killed instantly. The shooter, her own sister, and the reason she did it is more twisted than anyone could imagine. Fresno, California, September 24th, 2022. The night is quiet, still, the kind of silence that settles over a neighborhood when everyone's asleep, dreaming peacefully in their beds. But in one house, peace is about to be shattered forever. Inside, an 18-year-old mother lies sleeping. Her name is Yaneli Solario Rivera. In her arms, cradled against her chest, is her 3-week-old daughter, Celine, born just 21 days ago. A tiny life barely begun. Mother and child, resting, vulnerable, trusting. And then, gunshots pierce the darkness. When police arrive at the scene, what they find is unimaginable. Yaneli, dead. Shot multiple times. And still in her arms, baby Celine, also shot, also dead. A teenage mother and her newborn infant, murdered as they slept. But here's what makes this case so horrifying, so completely incomprehensible. The killer wasn't a stranger, wasn't an intruder breaking in from the outside. The person who pulled that trigger, and then it was family. Yaneli's own sister, 22-year-old Yoreli Solario Rivera. And the motive? Jealousy. Sibling rivalry taken to its most brutal, its most unthinkable extreme. This is the story of how envy turned deadly, how a sister's resentment transformed into a weapon, how 2 innocent lives were stolen by the one person who should have protected them. If this chills you to your core, don't scroll away. Subscribe now, because the truths that families hide in the shadows are the ones we need to expose to the light. This is the Yaneli and Celine Solario Rivera case, and it's more twisted than you can imagine. Let's go back. Before the murder, before the jealousy spiraled out of control, back to when Yaneli was just a young woman trying to build a life. Yaneli Solario Rivera was only 18 years old. 18. Think about that for a moment. An age when most people are just graduating high school, figuring out who they want to be, what they want to do with their lives. But Yaneli? She'd already stepped into one of life's most demanding roles. She was a mother. 3 weeks before her death, she'd given birth to Celine, a beautiful baby girl, her first child. And like any new mother, Yaneli was navigating the exhausting, overwhelming, beautiful chaos of early motherhood. The sleepless nights, the constant feedings, the way time blurs when you're caring for an infant, the fears, the hopes, the dreams you start building for this tiny person who depends on you for everything. Yaneli had dreams. She had to. She was so young, with her whole life stretching out before her. A life she wanted to share with her daughter. A future she wanted to build. But Yaneli wasn't doing this alone. She was part of a family, and families. Families can be complicated. She lived with her relatives, including her older sister, Yoreli. Just 4 years older, but those 4 years created a divide. Different stages of life, different pressures, different paths. On the surface, maybe things looked normal. 2 sisters, living under the same roof. But beneath that surface, something dark was growing. Jealousy. Now, sibling rivalry is nothing new. It's almost universal. The competition for attention, for approval, for love. Most siblings work through it. They grow up. They move past it. But sometimes that rivalry festers. It grows. It mutates into something toxic, something dangerous. And in the Solorio Rivera family, that's exactly what was happening. Ureli, the older sister, was watching, observing. And what she saw when she looked at Yaneli, it ate away at her. Maybe it was the attention Yaneli received as a new mother. Maybe it was jealousy over Yaneli's youth, her potential, her life trajectory. Maybe it was something deeper, something rooted in childhood grievances we'll never fully understand. But whatever the source, Ureli's feelings toward her younger sister were darkening with each passing day. And the arrival of baby Celine? That seems to have been the catalyst. The trigger point. Because now Yaneli wasn't just Yaneli anymore. She was a mother. She had someone to love, someone who depended on her, someone who made her important. And for Ureli, that was unbearable. Stories like this remind us how fragile family bonds can be, how easily love can be poisoned by resentment. Subscribe to stay aware of these warning signs, because protecting those who matter most starts with understanding the dangers that can hide in plain sight. The question everyone should have been asking was simple. How far would this jealousy go? No one imagined the answer would be murder. But the signs were there. The tension, the cold silences, the way Ureli looked at her sister, the way her resentment was building day by day, feeding on itself, growing stronger. And she wasn't alone in her darkness. She had someone encouraging her. Someone who would help turn her jealous thoughts into violent action. His name was Martin Arroyo Morales, Ureli's boyfriend, and he was about to become her accomplice in the unthinkable. Let's talk about jealousy. Not the mild kind. Not the fleeting envy you feel when someone has something you want. We're talking about the consuming kind. The kind that wraps around your thoughts like a vice. The kind that makes you obsess, that makes you angry, that makes you feel like you're being wronged just by someone else's existence. That's what was happening inside Ureli Solorio Rivera's mind. Every time she saw Yaneli with baby Celine, something inside her twisted. Every moment of attention Yaneli received as a new mother felt like a personal attack. Every time someone cooed over the baby, every time someone asked Yaneli how motherhood was going, Ureli felt it like a knife. Why her? Why does she get to be happy? Why does she get the attention? Why does everyone care about her and her baby? These thoughts spiraled, deepened, became darker, and here's where things get even more sinister. Because Ureli didn't keep these feelings to herself. She had someone to share them with. Someone who, instead of talking her down, instead of helping her see reason, fed into them. Martin Arroyo Morales, her boyfriend, and according to authorities, a gang member. Now, we don't know every detail of their relationship, but what we do know is chilling. Because Martin didn't stop Ureli. He didn't tell her she was being irrational. He didn't suggest therapy or family counseling or literally any healthy way to deal with these feelings. Instead, he helped her plan. Think about that. Two people sitting together, discussing how to murder a teenage mother and her 3-week-old baby, talking through the logistics, the timing, the method. How does that conversation even start? If this kind of betrayal shocks you to your core, hit subscribe right now. Knowing these stories, understanding how evil can hide in families, can help prevent tragedy in your own community. Don't look away. We can imagine the planning, the whispered conversations late at night, the justifications they must have created for themselves, the way they probably convinced each other that this was somehow necessary, somehow justified. Ureli's jealousy provided the motive, her twisted belief that Yaneli had wronged her somehow, that Yaneli deserved this. And Martin? He provided support, encouragement, the gang mentality of violence as a solution, the willingness to cross lines that most people would never even approach. Together, they became something far more dangerous than either would have been alone. The plan was simple, brutal in its simplicity. Wait until Yaneli was asleep, vulnerable, defenseless, and then pull the trigger. No confrontation, no argument, no chance for Yaneli to defend herself or even know what was happening. Just execution. And baby Celine? An innocent 3-week-old infant? She was part of the plan too. Not collateral damage, not an unfortunate casualty. Target. Because eliminating Yaneli wasn't enough. The baby represented everything Ureli resented. The attention, the love, the future. So Celine had to die too. As September 24th approached, Ureli and Martin had made their decision. They'd crossed the line in their minds from fantasy to reality, from angry thoughts to actionable plans. They were going to do this. They were going to murder Yaneli and Celine, and they were going to do it while both victims slept, completely unaware that the person they trusted, the family member who should have protected them, was about to become their killer. The date was set. The plan was ready. And in that Fresno home, Yaneli had no idea that her time on Earth was measured in hours.
A shocking arrest in the murder of 18-year-old Yaneli Solario Rivera and her 3-week-old daughter, Celine.
Today, police announcing the arrests of 22-year-old Ureli Solario Rivera, Yaneli's sister, and her boyfriend, 26-year-old Martin Arroyo Morales, for 2 counts of premeditated murder.
Our Ben Morris joining us live outside Fresno Police headquarters tonight. And Ben, police now describing how they unraveled this case.
Yeah, Chief Paco Balderrama saying the real breakthrough in this case came when police identified Arroyo Morales. And the chief says the murders were a crime of passion. Fresno Police Chief Paco Balderrama is a veteran cop, but he says he's never seen anything like this.
Some very bold comments were made by the people involved as far as the motive for this crime. I can tell you that. And we saw no remorse whatsoever. No guilt, no apprehension.
Police initially saying family members outside the home dialed 911 back on September 24th, and that Ureli was there that day, allegedly already planning the murders. Video released last Sunday showing Arroyo Morales, who police say is a validated gang member. Chief Balderrama saying the video providing an opportunity to bring the 2 individuals in.
In the last few days, they were detained, they were interviewed by homicide detectives, and at which time they confessed to the crime and led detectives to the whereabouts of the murder weapon.
The weapon, a 9mm Smith & Wesson handgun. Authorities not saying who fired the gun or where it was found. However, you can see video of Fresno police, along with several other government agencies, searching a field near where they initially believed the suspects fled. Fresno County District Attorney Lisa Smitkamp saying the horrific nature of the murders made the case personal for Fresno police.
There's nothing that tugs at the hearts and souls of people who wear badges than the death of young people. But when there's babies involved, it hits nerves. And those of us involved in this business, we don't sleep. We don't rest.
As of now, the couple's bail is set at $2 million apiece, and officials predict that they will be arraigned in the Fresno County Superior Court early next week. As it stands right now, they face life without parole and possibly even the death penalty. Reporting live, Ben Morris, KC24, local news that matters.
September 24th, 2022. The house is dark, quiet. The kind of late-night stillness where you can hear your own heartbeat if you pay attention. In her bedroom, Yaneli is asleep, exhausted from another day of new motherhood. The constant care, the feeding schedules, the beautiful, draining work of keeping a newborn alive and loved. In her arms, Celine sleeps too. 3 weeks old. So small, so fragile, so completely dependent on the person holding her. Mother and daughter, together, safe, or so they think. Because somewhere in that house, Ureli is awake, and she's made her decision. There's no turning back now. The jealousy, the resentment, the months or years of perceived slights and imagined wrongs, it's all come to this moment. She has a gun in her hand. Think about what's going through her mind right now. Is she hesitating? Is there a moment where she almost stops, almost realizes how insane this is? Does she look at her sleeping sister and feel anything other than rage? We'll never know. But what we do know is this: she doesn't stop. Yarely enters the room where Yaneli and Celine are sleeping. She raises the gun, and she fires. The shots shatter the silence. Loud, violent, final. Yaneli doesn't have time to scream, doesn't have time to shield her daughter, doesn't even have time to open her eyes and see who's killing her. She's hit multiple times, and then Yarely turns the gun on the baby, 3 weeks old, 21 days on this earth, a life that's barely begun. Yarely pulls the trigger again. Baby Celine is shot while still in her mother's arms. The room falls silent again. But it's a different kind of silence now. Heavy, suffocating. The silence of death. 2 lives, gone, stolen in seconds by the one person who should have loved them, protected them, cherished them. If this horror terrifies you, subscribe now. Stay alert to the dangers lurking even within families, because the most dangerous threats are often the ones we never see coming. And here's where the story takes another bizarre turn. After murdering her sister and infant niece, Yarely does something unexpected, something that would become a key piece of the investigation. She calls 911 on herself. Think about that. She just committed double homicide. She could have fled, could have tried to cover it up, could have done 100 different things. Instead, she picks up the phone and calls for help. Why? Was it panic? Immediate regret? A subconscious need to be caught? A twisted cry for intervention that came far too late? When the police arrive, they find a scene of absolute horror. Yaneli, dead. Multiple gunshot wounds. An 18-year-old life ended before it really began. And cradled in her arms, still positioned as if being protected even in death, baby Celine, also shot, also dead. The image is haunting, devastating. A mother who died still holding her child. A child who died in the place that should have been safest in the world, her mother's arms. First responders, police officers who've seen terrible things in their careers, they're shaken because this isn't just murder. This is familicide. This is betrayal on the deepest possible level. And the person who did it? She's right there, waiting. Yarely doesn't try to lie, doesn't claim self-defense, doesn't point to some imaginary intruder. The truth comes out quickly. She did this. She killed them. Her sister, her niece, her family. And if you won't subscribe after hearing this, tell us why in the comments. Because silence protects no one. And understanding these cases is the first step toward preventing the next one. As Yarely is arrested, as the reality of what she's done begins to sink in for everyone involved, one question echoes through the Fresno community. How? How does jealousy, sibling rivalry, resentment, how does any of that lead to murdering a sleeping teenager and her newborn baby? The investigation would seek answers. The trial would seek justice. But for Yaneli and Celine, nothing would ever bring them back.
Through various investigative efforts, we developed a positive identification on the individual in the video, which was released last week. And that is when the lies, the deception, and the evil intentions surrounding this case began to unravel. And it opened up an opportunity for my team to move in. Last night, Yarely Solorio Rivera, 12/5 of 99, sister of the victim, and Martin Arroyo Morales, 7/30 of 96, a validated gang member and boyfriend of the female suspect, were both arrested for 2 counts of premeditated murder. In the last few days, they were detained, they were interviewed by homicide detectives, and at which time they confessed to the crime and led detectives to the whereabouts of the murder weapon. This was an intricate and well-planned murder, but despite that, my team, with the help of those behind me, were able to figure out this crime and solve it. My words last week, we can now say with complete certainty that we have those responsible for this homicide in custody. We have the murder weapon, a Smith & Wesson 9mm handgun, and we have a motive: jealousy and sibling rivalry. To say that I am proud of the hard work, professionalism, and around-the-clock dedication of my homicide team is a gross understatement.
The Fresno Police Department had seen murders before, but this was different. The crime scene was clear. Yaneli and Celine shot while sleeping. No struggle, no defense. They never knew what was happening. Ureli had already confessed, called 911 on herself. But investigators needed more: the why, the how. Who else was involved? And another name kept surfacing: Martin Arroyo Morales, Ureli's boyfriend. He wasn't just aware. He actively helped plan the murders, encouraged them, made them possible. In California, that makes him equally guilty. Martin was arrested shortly after Ureli. The picture became clear. This was planned, premeditated. Two people deciding murder was the answer. The community was shattered. People want to believe families work things out, that love is stronger than hate. But here's the truth. The most dangerous person is often someone you know, someone you trust. Subscribe to witness how justice unfolds and stay informed to recognize the warning signs. Prosecutors built their case: the confession, crime scene evidence, witnesses to the tension. And Martin's involvement proved this wasn't temporary insanity. This was conspiracy. The defense would argue Ureli reached a breaking point, that she felt threatened, that she acted from fear. But the defense couldn't explain this. You don't murder someone in their sleep because you're afraid. You don't shoot a 3-week-old baby because you feel threatened. You don't plan double homicide with your boyfriend during a mental health crisis. The charges were filed. First-degree murder. 2 counts. Ureli Solorio Rivera and Martin Arroyo Morales would face justice. But one question lingered. Would the system give them what they deserved?
Ureli Solorio Rivera getting 2 life sentences today without the possibility of parole for the murders of her sister Yaneli and her infant niece, as her boyfriend, 29-year-old Martin Arroyo Morales, gets 22 years for voluntary manslaughter. But inside the courtroom, it was the father of these sisters making the plea that Arroyo Morales should have a longer sentence.
Yo creo que están tomando una mala decisión.
He is the one guilty of all of this. I know that you're trying to do what's right, but as a father, I already lost one daughter, and I do not want to lose another one just because someone got away with it.
The courtroom, where facts meet justice. Ureli Solorio Rivera sat at the defense table. 22 years old enough to know what she'd done. The prosecution's case was devastating. Crime scene photos, ballistics reports, the 911 call, Ureli's confession. Family members testified to the jealousy everyone noticed, but dismissed. The motive was clear: sibling rivalry taken to murder. The proof: premeditation. Planned, discussed, executed with cold calculation. Martin's involvement showed conspiracy. The defense claimed Ureli felt her children were threatened, that she acted out of twisted protection. But if you fear for your children's safety, you call police. You get protective orders. You don't murder a sleeping woman and her infant. That's not protection. That's premeditated murder. Subscribe to follow every chilling case, because seeing justice served reminds us why awareness matters. The verdict reflected the gravity. Ureli Solorio Rivera received 2 consecutive life terms without parole. She will spend the rest of her life behind bars.
She will never be on parole. She will die in prison.
She will die in prison, paying for September 24th, 2022. Martin also received substantial prison time. The judge spoke to the senselessness, the innocence, the betrayal. Justice had been served, but it doesn't bring back the dead. 2 life sentences, a message that jealousy never justifies taking a life. But as Ureli was led away, one question remained. Could this have been prevented? The themes here are universal: jealousy, family dysfunction, mental health, toxic relationships, escalating resentment. Recognizing them might prevent the next tragedy. Jealousy in families. Normal sibling rivalry differs vastly from toxic jealousy that leads to violence. Warning signs include obsessive comparison, inability to feel happy for siblings, constant dwelling on unfairness, escalating anger, isolation. These need professional intervention. Family therapy, counseling. Toxic relationships. Martin enabled Ureli's jealousy. Gang influences and partners who normalize violence are massive risk factors. Real love doesn't encourage harm. Real partnership doesn't mean planning crimes. Mental health. Something was deeply wrong in Ureli's thinking. Mental health services must be accessible and destigmatized. Subscribe to Stay Aware, because knowledge is prevention. Community awareness. Someone probably noticed things weren't right, but did they speak up? Community members must recognize when situations deteriorate toward violence. Protecting vulnerable populations. Yeneli was 18, a new mother, potentially isolated. Systems must protect young mothers. What happened in Fresno was catastrophic failure on multiple levels. Could it have been prevented? We'll never know. But recognizing warning signs matters. Taking mental health seriously matters. Intervening matters. Fresno will always remember September 24th, 2022. Yeneli was 18, a young woman with dreams and potential. Celine was 3 weeks old. She never got to smile or laugh. They were murdered in their sleep, defenseless, never knowing their killer should have protected them. Yerely will spend life in prison. Martin will spend years incarcerated. But punishment doesn't feel like enough. Nothing brings them back. What we can do is remember them, not just as victims, but as real people who mattered, who were loved. We tell their story as a cautionary tale. That jealousy unchecked can become deadly, that mental health matters, that toxic relationships must be addressed. If you won't subscribe, tell us why in the comments. Because every silence could cost a life. In Fresno, jealousy took 2 lives, but Yeneli and Celine's memory will never fade. They deserve to be remembered for the lives they should have lived. We have a responsibility to learn, to recognize warning signs, to speak up, to support those struggling. Because justice is more than punishment. Justice is prevention. Justice is protecting the next Yeneli and Celine before they become victims. Rest in peace, Yeneli. Rest in peace, Celine. Your story has been told. Your memory serves as warning and call to action. May families heal before violence erupts. May jealousy transform into understanding, resentment into reconciliation. That's the only tribute worthy of your stolen lives. That's the only justice that truly matters.